The Carpathians. It is much more than the word. It's the frosty air of snow-capped peaks, the smell of the needles of the Carpathian forests, and the sound of trembetas that once appeared over the mountains. A unique natural pearl attracts the attention of tourists from all over the world. Their ski resorts are famous and cover the needs of even the most spoiled tourist. Rafting on mountain rivers, skiing and snowboarding, swimming in ice holes, and tasting national dishes and drinks. This is all just a small part of what you get when visiting the Carpathians. The history of this region is quite extensive and complex in its own way. The uplift of the Carpathian mountain range occurred more than 25 million years ago, and since its appearance has not changed much. Over time, there were periodic upward movements of the rock, the hydrographic network deepened, the relief was dissected, and different landscape areas were formed. The surface of the sandy shale ridges seems to be penetrated by the rivers Dnista, Prut, and their tributaries. Among the mountains of Chernogorsky, Svidovets, and other massifs, glacial lakes and moraine ridges can often be found. And along the southwestern edge, a ridge stretches through all of the Carpathians, which arose as a result of volcanic eruptions and sedimentary masses. The etymology of the Carpathians word, as well as the region itself, has an ancient history. People believe that this name was first used by Herodotus in the 5th century BC. Exploring the origin of the word, linguists determine the meaning of this toponym as mountain, stone, and chain of stones. Words similar in sound and spelling were found in the pre-Indo-European language substratum. Even in the Paleozoic era, on the site of the modern Carpathians, there was a mountain range that connected the Sventokriski and Sutenland mountains with Dobroya. This mountain range was located on the territory of the modern Carpathian Mountains. As a result of tectonic shifts, this range was completely destroyed, and in its place, already in the Mesozoic era, an almost flat territory arose. Interestingly, the very appearance of the Carpathians was due to a significant amount of precipitation and the actions of the basins of the ancient Tethys Ocean. At the end of the Mesozoic, the ocean retreated from this territory, but the landscape also changed under the influence of the movement of water. At this time, also the Cenozoic period, the formation of a huge mountain system in which the Carpathians act as a central link, began. This change includes the modern Apennines, Pyrenees, Alps, Carpathians, Balkans, Crimea, Caucasus, and Pamirs. The formation of the Carpathians was due to the destruction of the mountain forms in the southwest part of the Eastern European platform, the Kil-Sandomirs range, the Sudetists, Pro-Carpathians, Dobroya, and the Marmarish Massif. Volcanic activity was also inherent in this region. Many extinct ancient volcanoes are still here in the Carpathian areas. So, for example, in the very center of the city of Kust in Transcarpathia, the cone of an extinct volcano still rises. There are similar cones in the vicinity of Uzhgorod, Mukachevo, and Beregovo. Volcanic craters are better preserved near Vyshkov. Active volcanic processes still sometimes remind of themselves with earthquakes or landslides. The last recorded earthquake occurred in 1977. Not so long ago when you think about it, right? The region is rich in minerals such as oil, gas, manganese, marble, and many others. In addition, the Carpathians boast several mineral springs, famous all over the world and bringing a good income to the region. Waters saturated with carbon dioxide, Svaljava and Polyana Vasova, are used for the treatment and prevention of diseases of the gastrointestinal tract. Saturated sulfate chloride waters of Morschen and low mineralized waters of Truskavets also improve digestion, help cleanse the body of toxins, and soak it up with essential microelements. For tourists, the Carpathians are not only a great place where you can improve your health while drinking some water in a sanatorium, but also a way to get an adrenaline rush while conquering mountain peaks. The most famous of them are Black Mountain, Mount Petros, Hutentamnatik, Mount Rebra, and the highest peak of the Eastern Carpathians and Ukraine, Mount Hoverla. Mount Hoverla is a mountain with a conical shape. Rising 6,762 feet above sea level, it's located on the border of the Ivano-Frankivsk Transcarpathian regions, 10.5 miles from the border of Ukraine with Romania. As part of the Montenegrin mountain range, Hoverla belongs to two protected areas, the Carpathian Natural Nature Reserve and the Carpathian Biosphere Reserve. Of course, Hoverla is not the highest peak of the whole chain of the Carpathian Mountains. The roof of the Carpathians, Mount Gerlachowski Szczyt, 8,709 feet high, is located in the Tatras on the border of Poland and Slovakia. But despite the inferior size, Hoverla is more attractive to tourists from all over the world. An interesting fact about the name of this mountain, linguists have identified similar words in several languages, and all of them, one way or the other, describe Hoverla. For example, the German word Hauer means high ground. The Hungarian Hover means snow fortress. It's not surprising because the top of Hoverla, even in summer, is often covered with snow. It's also not surprising that Hoverla is covered with many legends. According to one of them, in ancient times, a young fellow named Prut and the beautiful girl Hoverla fell in love with each other. But Hoverla's father was against his daughter's relationship with this simple young man and forbade them to meet. From grief, the girl threw herself off a cliff, and the next morning a great mountain grew in place of the valley. Prut looked for his beloved for a long time, climbed to the top, and never returned. Since then, they have been together, the beautiful and majestic Hoverla and the powerful stream of the Prut originating from its top. Like any young lady, Hoverla is very changeable, the climate unpredictable. From the foot of the mountains to its top, there are 3 climatic zones. A belt of coniferous forests with a temperature of 75 to 82 degrees in the warm season and anywhere from 5 to 14 degrees in the winter. It is followed by a moderately cold zone. Dwarf pine and Siberian juniper are most often found here. The average annual temperature is between 50 and 53 degrees. The belt stretches up to a height of 6,233 feet above sea level. And the third climatic zone is the mountain tundra, a rather cool belt with practically no forests or shrubs, but full of moss and lichens. An ideal pasture area for herds of Carpathian sheep, which are covered with thick wool and do not tolerate heat at the foot of the mountain. On the beautiful mountain slopes, there are beech fir forests, which are replaced exclusively by spruces with increasing height. Ferns are another characteristic feature of Hoverla. The older the forest, the denser the thickets of these plants. And it was from here that the legend about the color of the fern on the feast of Ivan Kupala originated, which will give happiness and wealth to those who find it. More than 100 species of rare plants grow on the slopes of Hoverla. From early spring to late autumn, they fascinate everyone who has ever been near the highest mountain of of the Ukrainian Carpathians. Hoverla attracts with flowering trees and bushes. Here you can see golden and greenish forsythia bushes, cypresses, Himalaya pines, downy peacocks, and many other representatives of the flora. The coniferous forest also has its own unique features. With each meter uphill, the spruces become lower. At an altitude of 4,921 feet, the subalpine crooked forest begins, where mountain pine, common juniper, and green alder meet. On the northern slopes, frost-resistant mountain pine, on the southern, dry-loving common juniper. And overcoming the mark of 6,233 feet, crooked forests are replaced by alpine meadows. It's between these two belts that grow light purple Soldanella Hungarian and mountain sky blue Genetian sleepgrass, Heifel saffron, and a rather rare rhododendron. Rhododendron is a plant listed in the Red Book of Ukraine. Mostly its buds are pink, sometimes white, but according to legend it blooms red once every 10 years. As the legend goes, if a girl finds this particular red flower and gives it to a young man, he will always love her and never betray her. The fauna of the Carpathian Mountains and Hoverla is also striking in its diversity. European roe deer, red deer, wild boar, and other mammals live content at the foot of the mountains, and the tundra zone is inhabited by lynxes, brown bears, foxes, wolves, and small predators such as badgers, martens, and ferrets. The Carpathians are considered home to most of the ornithological world of Ukraine. Here you can meet sparrows, siskin, and hazel grouses that are familiar to us, as well as hawks, jays, capercaillie, and many others. Among the reptiles, the lizard, salamander, and only poisonous snake in the Carpathians, the viper, are common. But let's talk about the history of the region. The first mention of human settlement on this territory of present-day Transcarpathian dates back to the early Paleolithic period, about 500,000 years BC. The Romans, as you know, pursued a rather active, aggressive policy and ousted many people from their lands. As a result of such displacements from the Siret and Prut valleys, the Carps, one of the Thracian tribes, moved here. This version, by the way, is another one of the origins of the name Carpathians, according to historians. Further archaeological evidence confirms that already in ancient times, the population of the Carpathian region had a high material and spiritual culture, genetically common with the culture of the tribes of the Dnieper, Dniester, Forest Steppe, and Volhynia, where an intense process of the formation of Eastern Slavs took place. The period of the 9th through 11th centuries was quite significant for Transcarpathia, since these lands were part of the powerful East Slavic state, Kievan Rus. Then, until the middle of the 20th century, Transcarpathia was part of the Kingdom of Hungary, the Austrian Habsburg monarchy, the Czechoslovak Republic, and Gordy Hungary. And from 1919 to 1920, Transcarpathia received the status of an autonomous region within the Czechoslovak Republic. In 1939, after the division of Czechoslovakia by Hitler, Carpatho-Ukraine arose, with Augustin Voloshin as president. But after a few months, the troops of Gordy Hungary occupied the territory of the entire region and ceased to exist in Carpathian Ukraine. In October of 1944, after the Red Army entered the lands of Transcarpathia, The territory was proclaimed an independent state, Transcarpathian Ukraine, with its own government, the People's Council. However, this period of independence did not last long, and in 1945, Transcarpathia became part of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. People in the Carpathians have always strived for freedom and independence and defended their lands with sweat and blood. For many centuries, invaders tried to conquer these freedom-loving people. History remembers the popular uprisings led by Muka, Semyon Vysokin, the peasant war led by Dirty Dos, and the war in the regiments of Ferenc I Rakoczy. The most famous public defender was Oleksii Mandryko. An invincible Hutzul, a robber, a murderer, and a fighter for the freedom of his people, the image of Oleksii still causes the liveliest debate among historians. The story of the national avenger of the Carpathians inspired the people so much that many legends, songs, and poems were dedicated to him. It is believed that in childhood, Oleksii had severe problems with his legs. But suddenly he was healed in an unknown way and became the strongest and most invincible man of the region. Seeing the oppression and suffering of his relatives, the young shepherd fled to the mountains and joined a gang of rebels, guardsmen whom he later led. Legends and songs say that Oleksii Mandryko always carried with him 2 pistols and a saber, and did not part with his smoking pipe, while instilling fear in the gentry. The Transcarpathian Robin Hood, as people called him, was a stately, handsome guy who was not taken by the bullets of enemies, and no one could defeat him in a duel. Oleksii was said to be a huge success with women. Rumors say that all the girls and women who saw him fell in love with him instantly. But the most romantic and tragic legend tells about his love for a girl named Marika. Already a married man, Oleksii fell in love with the already married Marichka and even hurried to her from his rebel campaigns. For her sake, as people say, he committed his first crime. He killed the master who treated his Marika badly. According to one version, Oleksii died in the backyard of his beloved. Marika's husband, Stefan, shot Mandryko from his gun with a silver bullet because other bullets could not injure the national hero. However, according to another version, Mandryko was killed by a group of mercenaries sent by the gentry. In beautiful Yaremsh, tourists are attracted by the Mandryko Trail. Walking along it, you can touch the spirit of history, feel the flair of ancient battles, and plunge into the atmosphere of a wild rebel movement led by Oleksii Mandryko. The trail winds through Mount Mokovitsa and will lead you to the Mandryko Rock, a pristine and beautiful place filled with mysterious rumors and legends, covered with a dense Carpathian forest, and as if protecting its children, militias. According to legend, it was here in these ancient caves that the Mandryko gang hid from the gentry and kept their treasures. Many believe that deep in the caves, one can still find pieces of stolen gold and stones that Mandryko and his supporters took away from the pans. Legends of the Carpathians tell many interesting stories about the life and struggle of the leader of the Transcarpathian robbers. Some even chill the bone in their veins. It's documented that the residents of Mandryko were the Transcarpathian village of Yasinya. It was this secluded corner of Transcarpathia that protected the rebel from harsh winters and the Hungarian army. There, Oleksii Mandryko experienced defeats and victories, rested, and prepared for new campaigns. He selected worthy warriors in his units and developed his further strategy of attacks and revenge. There, in secret hiding places, the Trans-Carpathian Robin Hood kept important documents. Traveling through these mysterious places, you'll get answers to many questions. You can understand why the legendary Trans-Carpathian Ottoman Oleksii Dovbush chose such a life, brave and cruel, short and bright, passing through its thorny paths. The interesting life story of this unusual person is amazing. From the incredible legends, the songs, the ballads about Oleksii Dovbush, it becomes clear that he was quite an extraordinary figure, a kind of noble knight and favorite of the common people despite his brutal reprisals against enemies. Another legend reaches 5th century AD. There is an opinion that the ruler of the Huns, Attila, was from Transcarpathia. Scientists and historians explain this rumor by the fact that Attila was most likely buried in this area. According to legend, the famous ruler was buried in 3 coffins, copper, silver, and gold. Several trusted people blocked the bed of the Tisa River, dug a deep hole, and buried the body of Attila in its 3 coffins. Then they returned the course of the river to its place. The legend says that after the burial ceremony, other warriors killed those who knew about the burial place of Attila, and they, in turn, were shot from bows by the following Huns. This was done so no one would ever know the burial place of the great king of the Huns. Rumor has it that the one who finds the grave of the ruler and frees Attila will release into the world the incredible power of catastrophe and misfortune. The cultural heritage of the Carpathian people is quite rich and interesting. Bright traditions that originated in antiquity have survived to this day. Folk festivities for the holidays, traditional dishes, the recipes of which are passed down from generation to generation. Songs and dances are different for each occasion. The inhabitants of the Carpathians love and appreciate life itself, and glorify their ancestors and the nature among which they lived. Many tourists come here just before the holidays to immerse themselves in the atmosphere of fun and fully experience the indescribable local flavor. For example, wedding traditions here are very diverse. A wedding in the Carpathians is a unique ceremony with many theatrical elements. It reflects the huge potential of the people, their mentality, and their priorities. Having gone through a long history, some wedding traditions do not lose their relevance today. Wedding rituals were conditionally divided into 3 parts: matchmaking, the celebrating of the wedding itself, and after the wedding traditions. The groom would choose matchmakers who were supposed to go to the house of the parents to woo the girl. Usually these were older relatives, family friends, and respected people in the village. The result and further development of events of the wedding itself depended on the choice of matchmakers. Having crossed the threshold, the matchmakers had to get permission to enter the house, and bow as a sign of greeting and gratitude to the owners. They clarified whether they came to the right house and whether a beautiful girl lives there. The bride's parents prepared in advance for the arrival of the matchmakers and met them with a set table, bread, and salt. This was called the living room, or a tribute to the guests. At dinner, the matchmakers offered their young man as a husband to the girl and told her what this groom was good for. If a girl agreed to marry a good fellow, she took out towels and bandaged matchmakers with them. She would turn down the proposal by giving the young man a pumpkin. If the matchmaking was successful, the elders appointed the bride, meeting with the groom's household. The engagement was announced 2 weeks before the wedding. On this day, the parents and relatives of the young man came to the girl's house and sat down at the table. The eldest in the family had to cover the bread with rushnik, a traditional embroidered towel, then place the girl's hand on it and the guy's hand on top of her hand, and bandage them with a towel. After that, the bride would tie up the elders with towels and gave scarves, canvases, or shirts to everyone present. After all these rituals, the lucky couple was considered engaged and could no longer refuse marriage. An attempt to refuse was considered dishonorable, and for this they paid a refund of material costs and paid for abuse. On the eve of the wedding, the ceremony of farewell of the bride and groom was performed with girlish and boyish freedom, which was called a hen party or stag party, and they took place separately in the houses of the bride and groom. On the wedding day, the groom, along with his guests and musicians, came to the bride's home to escort her to church. At the gates and at the entrance to the house, the draws were held. The groom was required to pay an entry fee, as well as to guess which of several girls was his bride. For this, bridesmaids were brought out, dressed up as an old woman or gypsies beyond recognition. Already in the house, the headman called the parents of the bride and groom, tied them with towels, and then they blessed their children for a long and happy life. Parents handed the children verchenik, or a wedding cake, with which the future newlyweds left home. On the way to the altar, the guests following the bride and groom were sure to sing sad songs, and on the way back, the cheerful and catchy songs. A very important place in the wedding ceremony was the obligatory Dance of the Bride. It's called Magnoson dance. It was believed that a girl at her wedding should dance a lot before entering into married life. Anyone could dance with the bride, but the first and last dances belonged to the groom. Another important ritual at a wedding is untwisted braids. After the Magnoson dance, the girl was seated on a chair or bench in the middle of the room, the veil was removed, the braids twisted in an adult manner, and a kerchief was tied as a symbol that the girl had grown up and become a married woman. The next day, the bride moved to the groom's house, and this was also one of the rituals. All the dowry was put into a buggy, along with the bride, her girlfriends, and the groom, with friends riding along in the buggy as well. The wedding would go on for 3 days. After another 2 weeks, everyone gathered again for kulachiki. The bride had to bake a lot of such cakes herself and feed her parents-in-law and guests, thereby showing she was a good housewife. In each region of Transcarpathia, traditional features of folk clothes have been preserved. For many centuries, these signs have been a very important source of the ethnic culture of the population, their beliefs, and aesthetic views. Each family traditionally produced various types of linen for clothes, underwear, bed linen, as well as tablecloths and household fabrics. An important component of folk attire is a shirt. Rich embroidery and decorative seams were placed on the inset of the rectangular neckline, as well as on the sleeves and wrists. The neck itself is decorated with a narrow strip of geometric ornament. In the color scheme, preference was given to burgundy and brown. This was typical for both women's and men's shirts, which served as festive and everyday wear. Women sewed them not to order, but for themselves. They went on dates in them, got married in them, gave birth and baptized children, and celebrated all the holidays during the year. The women's folk costume is distinguished by a variety of details, colors, and features of the material. A sleeveless jacket, or labik, made of velveteen or black velour with a round neckline and on the shoulders, was put on directly on the shirt. The sleeveless jacket was decorated with multicolored beads, buttons, and a bright braid. The skirt was decorated with ornamental embroidery along the bottom edge, with the addition of lace. The belt had a woven ornament, often one-colored. Girls and women wore jewelry made of colored beads and necklaces made of amber and colored stones. Young girls had wreaths on their heads, which were made of wire wrapped in linen and decorated with multicolored beads. In some cases, artificial flowers were used. Hair was braided into two braids, weaving ribbons into them. The head was covered with a scarf. There were also age differences in the colors of the scarves. Young girls wore bright colors, while older women wore dark ones. As for the men's suit, the shirt still played the major role in it. It was sewn from the same material as the women's. The shirt had wide sleeves, assembled onto an assembly at the wrist, to which the cuffs were sewn. On the shoulders, from the outside, rectangular patches were sewn. The length of the shirt was below the waist and worn for graduation. The ornament was mainly vegetative. It was embroidered on the collar, shoulder patches, cuffs, and the bottom of the shirt. The white openwork mesh finished the bottom for sure. A stand-up collar was sewn into the rollout, which was pulled together and tied with cords folded by hand. Shirts were girded with wide leather belts. The bottom of the men's suit was represented by wide canvas trousers, most often white. They were called gamati. At the bottom of the trouser leg, it was decorated with fringe. An apron with embroidery around the perimeter and also a traditional fringe along the edges was worn over the trousers. An obligatory attribute was a bag, testra, also embroidered by hand with floral or geometric ornaments. On the feet of the girls, white socks or zokli and black boots, tepanki, were invariable, and for men, boots or chizmas. Ukrainians are rather musical people, and almost any action, whether it's a wedding or harvest, folk holidays or parties, is always accompanied by music and songs. In the Carpathians, several musical instruments are characteristic of this area. The main and probably most famous of them is the trembita, an instrument unique in appearance and sound character, which was used by inhabitants of the Hutzul region and Bukovina as a means of communication. The sizes of the trembita reached about 8 meters, the volume of the reproduced sound 2.5 octaves, and the sound was able to travel over 10 kilometers. Since ancient times, the trembita has been called by herds of domestic animals, invited to visit, and even announced tragedies. In the old days, the Hutsuls believed that trembita should only be produced from a tree that was struck by lightning, in order to preserve the power of the creator in sound. An interesting fact: some culturologists and historians of Ukraine believe that it was the use of the trembita during Ruslana Lizhichko's performance at Eurovision in 2004 that brought her victory. Cymbals are another hallmark of Carpathian music. If trembitas are the sound of mountain slopes, then cymbals are dances and joy. Since the 17th century, this musical instrument has served as an accompaniment to all the holidays and festivities of the inhabitants of the Carpathians. Cymbals are a flat-stringed instrument that makes a sound when struck with special sticks or plucked. Kobza and bandura are flavor-stringed musical instruments that are very similar to each other. The difference between them is their cost and the number of strings. Kobza was considered a cheap instrument for the common people and only had 25 strings. The bandura, on the other hand, was made of more expensive material, equipped with 65 to 80 strings, and was most often found in the homes of wealthy people. It's noteworthy that Taras Shevchenko, the famous Ukrainian poet, writer, artist, and folklorist, is most often portrayed with a kobza in his hands. Do not forget about the Ukrainian bagpipe, duda. Duda is also known as goat fur or sheep because it is made from dressed lamb or goat skin, complemented by a pipe and squeakers. The uniqueness and popularity for the most part among the shepherds, the duda gets its sound from a large volume of air inside the bag. This makes it possible for the musician to not constantly blow into the tank, but to be able to sing along to himself. The nature of the Carpathians is amazing and perfect. Songs and poems are written about her, films are made, and pictures are painted by her. Majestic mountains wrapped in dense shady forests, ice-capped peaks and snowy slopes dotted with ski tracks and tracks of wild animals. The Carpathians are beautiful any time of year. The unique and beautiful nature of the Carpathian Mountains never ceases to amaze. And no matter how popular winter is in the mountains, you should not belittle the importance of other seasons. Spring brings with it the smell of fresh grass on the slopes and meadows. Nature wakes up, throws off a warm snow blanket, and washes it away with melted water and puts on a bright green sundress. Flowers bloom and fill the mountain slopes and plains, courtyards and restaurants with a stunning smell, penetrating into the souls of people, remaining pleasantly warm in them. Nature generously endows the Carpathian land with fertility, riches, and life itself. Spring is a great time for a trip to the Carpathians with the whole family, spending a honeymoon among the riot of flowering carpets and lush greenery, and just relaxing in an amazing place. In early spring, there is no such excitement on the mountain slopes, but the snow still allows you to enjoy skiing, sledging, and snowboarding. If you prefer a relaxing holiday in the bosom of nature, spring in the Carpathians is your best option. Many guest houses and resorts are in close proximity to all the wonders of Mother Nature. You'll be able to see with your own eyes how the ice crust cracks on mountain rivers and lakes, watch the primroses bloom, and inhale their delicate aroma to the fullest. The Carpathian land, awakening from winter's sleep, becomes truly beautiful. And in late spring, a flower carpet covering the mountain slopes can impress even the most experienced travelers. Fabulous color landscapes await you here in late spring. Lush carpets of mountain flowers and shrubs create the best conditions to just step back from everyday worries and plunge headlong into the delightful world of spring awakening. In early May, the famous Daffodil Valley blooms in Transcarpathia, delighting visitors with its snow-white charm. By the way, spring in the Carpathians is a unique time of year when extreme sports lovers can still stir up their blood by skiing or snowboarding, and connoisseurs of a calm and unhurried holiday will bring an even spring tan from their vacation. The melting of snow caps with the advent of spring fills the Carpathian rivers and makes them deep enough for rafting. Riding kayaks or catamarans along mountain rapids and winding rivers will definitely make your heart beat in a crazy rhythm with delight and adrenaline. And the Carpathian waterfalls in the spring will make you fall in love with them at first sight and for life. Close to summer, the Carpathians will give you the opportunity to experience the unique atmosphere of ancient mountains and dense forests, and explore legendary trails filled with stories and legends. Just look at this incredible beauty. Imagine how pleasant it would be to inhale this purest air, feeling how your lungs and every molecule are filled with freshness and the smell of pine needles and moss. How incredibly amazing it would be to roam the mountain paths, learn the secrets of the forest, and hear the echoes of ancient legends. And how wonderful to return in the evening, sit on the veranda of your guest house with a cup of herbal tea, and experience this amazing nature with all your senses. Autumn in the Carpathian Mountains is probably another wonder of the world. It is unrecognized officially, but no less beautiful. When the greenery of dense forests changes its clothes and the slopes are covered with shades of gold and amber, the Carpathians become amazingly beautiful. Mountain rivers slow down the rapid flow as it prepares for the approaching winter sleep. Local residents harvest, pay tribute to the fertility of the past season, and make preparations for winter. A visit to the Carpathians in this autumn period will provide an opportunity to fully enjoy rest. Even with the frequency of rains and winds, good weather in the mountains is not uncommon. Temperatures are ideal for hiking and often hover around 15 to 20 degrees Celsius or 59 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. The transformed forest is amazing with a variety of colors and full of bright shades of yellow, red, orange, green, brown, and others. And if you were lucky enough to stop on the shore of the lake, then all this multicolor reflected in the mirror surface of the water doubles. Is this not a fairy tale? Being in the Carpathians in autumn, you will find yourself immersed in a calm atmosphere where there is no unnecessary noise, and everything around you focuses on your own desires and goals. Such appeasement encourages the search for harmony with oneself and, of course, relaxing. By the way, housing in the Carpathians is the cheapest in autumn, so if you want to spend your holidays closer to nature but away from the crowds, then autumn is your best option. The prime time for a pleasant and comfortable stay in the Carpathians is September. The summer heat has already subsided, the frosts have not yet come, and the warm weather is not yet overshadowed by slush and mud, as happens during the October rains. In September, the mushroom picking season begins. Of course, there is a myriad of mushrooms in the Carpathian forest. You'll find an abundance of a variety of mushrooms. Mycologists from all over the world travel to visit the Carpathian Mountains. And most important, mushrooms in the Carpathian forests are environmentally friendly and rich in a large number of useful substances and trace elements. It's widely known that mushrooms, in terms of their energy value, are not inferior even to meat. In terms of the number of proteins and fats, mushrooms are significantly superior to bread, cereals, beef, and fish. Mushrooms contain sulfur, zinc, potassium, sodium, iron, copper, iodine, manganese, as well as phosphorus, calcium, and about 8 amino acids. These substances actively stimulate digestion, and the metals are great for blood circulation. The autumn forest is also full of berries and herbs, which are widely known for their unique taste and amazing healing effects. The famous Carpathian herbal tea is harvested in autumn, when the spring and summer sun has completely absorbed the plants with its warmth and necessary beneficial properties. Lingonberries, blueberries, and even raspberries grow in huge quantities in the Carpathian forest. Just have time to collect them. And how many vitamins are in these fragrant berries? And of course, the most amazing memory of autumn in the Carpathians will be a walk to Lake Senevert, Sea Eye as the locals call it, because of the marvelous mini island in the center of the lake. The clear, cold water will not allow you to swim in it, but you can ride a raft and enjoy the amazing scenery of the Crimson Forest. Around the lake there is a national park with a small tourist base where you can stop for the night if you didn't have time to leave before dark and try their famous national cuisine. And if you're lucky, then get to the annual music festival. But of course the winter months attract special attention. At this time, the nature of the Carpathians impresses us with its skill to play with only 2 colors, white and blue. It's hard to imagine that such beauty can be observed live. A dense and creaky snow carpet covers the mountain slopes. Rivers and streams turn into icy masterpieces and dazzle with their brilliance. Sunrises in the Carpathians in winter deserve special mention. Imagine mighty mountain peaks and plateaus covered with snow and the sun rising above them. Under the influence of frost and wind, its rays acquire a soft pink hue and paint everything around in unexpected but no less bewitching colors. If you ever have the opportunity to visit the Carpathians in winter, be sure and meet the sunrise at the top. These memories and unforgettable feelings will no doubt remain with you for a very long time. The famous Lake Senever never freezes at all in winter. Even the most severe frosts cannot cope with its 72-foot depth of the sea eye of the Carpathians. The mirror surface of the lake spreads a cold calm and reflects the stunning landscape of the snowy forest. Carpathian waterfalls in winter are truly an incredible sight. Take, for example, the Manayovsky waterfall, the highest in Ukraine. It's a stunning mountain waterfall that drops its waters from a height of 59 feet. But just imagine what happens in winter. Prickly frost and consistently low temperatures turn the water stream into incredible ice sculptures. A huge wall of water freezes in time with bizarre ice shapes, in the outlines of which you can see anything depending on the flight of your imagination. With the advent of winter, many memorable places in the Carpathians acquire even more charm and seem fabulous. Ancient castles covered with snow seem to be drawn by an artist and not a real place where the families of wealthy merchants, princes, and other powerful people once lived. Outdoor enthusiasts come here knowing that the Carpathians will provide them with an unforgettable vacation for any budget. There are expensive, world-famous resort centers like Bukovel and more democratic hotels and guest houses almost at the foot of the mountains. As for entertainment, here your soul can roam to the fullest. Snowboarding, skiing, sledding, and ice skating, to name a few. For example, high-speed snowmobiles. Enjoy speed combined with the fantastically beautiful nature of the Carpathian Mountains. Or take a ride through the Carpathian forest with a husky team. Discover winter paintball and relax while fishing in one of the trout farms. And for the most daring and fearless, there is zorbing. Just imagine a huge, transparent, inflatable ball made of high-strength technical plastic rushing down the mountain slope at incredible speeds, and you are inside the ball. Of course, the developers took care of the safety of such a vehicle, and the instructors strictly monitor it. Well, after a busy day full of adventures, adrenaline, fun, and a share of fear, a magnificent traditional Ukrainian dinner awaits all guests. Ukrainian cuisine is rich and varied. For the famous Ukrainian borscht, for example, everyone's home chef cooks it differently. In the Carpathians, red peppers are traditionally put in this dish. Of course, on the table there must be dumplings with different fillings and a bowl of always fresh sour cream. Various pickles, homemade sausages and smoked meats, lard, and many other traditional dishes. One thing unites all this gastronomic splendor: all of this is incredibly tasty. The Silver Land, as the Carpathians are also called, simply amazes with a variety of dishes. Trans-Carpathian delicacies are both well-known and beloved dishes, as well as unexpected gastronomic combinations. In addition to the unusual and obligatory dishes, guests of the region are offered to taste unusual and sometimes surprising culinary masterpieces. For example, bonush. The dish originated when the inhabitants of Transcarpathia only had sour cream and cornmeal left of their products. Traditionally, this appetizer is prepared by men, and a place for cooking bunush must be equipped in every yard. A real hutsal bunush is cooked on an open fire in a huge cast iron kettle, continuously stirring the dish exclusively with a wooden spoon, clockwise, or as the hutsals say, in the path of the sun. Bunush is traditionally served with cracklings or salted cheese, which makes the taste of the dish even more interesting. Mamaliga, grout, mushroom zuppa, peniche, and many other equally unique and interesting dishes came to the Carpathian land from neighbors. Romania, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, and even a bit of Sicily gave Carpathian cuisine a huge number of ideas and dishes. But Ukrainians have added their own unique flavor to each of them. A peculiar spice characteristic only for this mountainous region, the forest spirit, the freshness of mountain rivers, and the smell of freedom are felt in every dish prepared by the hands of Carpathians. Unfortunately, the mountain landscapes of the Carpathians do not allow the inhabitants of this region to grow a large number of crops, but talented and hard-working hutsals take everything that the Ukrainian land can offer them, giving in return their unconditional love and care. In the lowlands, due to warmer climatic conditions, potatoes, sugar beets, corn, tea, and tobacco grow successfully. Also, the Carpathian lowland is great for vineyards. Do not miss the opportunity to taste local wines made from berries ripened right under the bright mountain sun and saturated with Carpathian spring water. Do you know this phrase? Wine tastes like sunshine. It's perfect for describing their local vintages. Higher lands are cultivated and sown with more cold-resistant crops. Basically, these are fodder grains, potatoes, flax, legumes, and perennial grasses. Everyone knows that Carpathian herbs are a storehouse of useful properties. The famous Carpathian herbal tea can soothe frayed nerves, relieve headaches, or even help with digestion. In addition, the process of collecting medicinal and fragrant herbs can turn into an interesting adventure. Of course, each housewife grows many other vegetables and fruits on her plot. Cabbage, carrots, eggplants, and tomatoes, fragrant berries and greens are found everywhere. You just have to go out in the yard. Many people in rural areas keep cattle, goats, and sheep as they graze on the mountain slopes and feed on juicy, fresh herbs. Milk, homemade sour cream, and cheese are strikingly different in taste from those that we're accustomed to tasting. They have a certain sweetness inherent only in Carpathian products. Chickens, ducks, geese, and even domestic rabbits are also frequent members of the Ukrainian household, and with the advent of summer warmth, a loud squeak of little chicks is heard from almost every yard. Since ancient times, mountains have been a place where the soul relaxes, breathing becomes cleaner and more frequent, and all bad thoughts leave your mind. The beauty of the majestic Carpathians is incredible and undeniable, both in winter and in summer. There are a huge number of tourists here. Someone prefers adrenaline and conquers the mountain slopes on skis, snowboards, and snowmobiles, while others simply enjoy the surrounding beauty and restore lost balance and peace of mind. Everyone will find themselves here. Even if the Carpathians are not distinguished by fertility, they are distinguished by sincerity, which no one can ever take away from these mountains. In the warm season, it's better to relax in the open air because only here in the mountains can you see such a starry sky. The Carpathians can be different, a healing place where peace reigns, driving slopes that give a stunning supply of adrenaline, and just a cozy, fragrant, and warm home where you